It's Kyle Coberline, a truck and RV sales professional at Bluegrass International Trucks, Buses, RVs, and Ideal Lease. We're in Kentucky. I came down to the 2022 Renegade Rally here at the Ridge Outdoor Resort. You can see the event center behind me. I had a ton of customers that wish they could have came. This was a top quality, top notch event. The people that organize this, the sponsors, I mean, they do a heck of a job. So I try to film as many of the presentations as I could so people could do a refresher, or the people that couldn't make it. And without further ado, you know, I'll attach one of the presentations to this intro and go from there.
Maintain it, and then what I do in an annual maintenance, and I'll just basically go through a section, and then I'll ask if there's any questions, and just raise your hand, and I'll call on you, and then we'll move on to the next section, and then of course we can answer questions at the end as well. What you have in there is a boiler full of transfer fluid. It's this yellow stuff here. That's what Renegade uses, this yellow Century brand fluid. And that's what you're heating up. So you're not heating water like a regular water heater would. You're heating the transfer fluid. There's a couple different ways to heat that. One of them being what's called a Webasto burner, a diesel burner. And the other way is the electric heating element, which is just like a heating element that would be screwed into your water heater at home, although, like I said, this is heating the transfer fluid, so it's screwed into the transfer fluid boiler, and that's what that's heating. Some of you will have, if you have a 450 model, you'll have what's called engine preheat / engine assist, and that will heat your boiler going down the road. So going down the road, you're driving down the road, your engine's getting hot, your water pump is running your engine antifreeze through your engine, of course, and then it sends it up to the Aqua-Hot through a copper coil in that Aqua-Hot, then back through your engine. So as your engine antifreeze is getting hot, it's transferring the heat through a copper coil to heat your engine. Any questions about that? Yes? It does happen automatically, yes. Your water pump's doing all the work. Now on the other side of that function, if you wanted to preheat your engine, you have your diesel burner turned on and the engine preheat switch, and a pump on your Aqua-Hot is moving your engine antifreeze through that loop, heating your engine. Now the way the heat works is when you go to your thermostat, you call for heat. When you turn the burner on, you call for heat at your thermostat. What happens is that a pump is activated in the Aqua-Hot, and it pumps that hot transfer fluid out of the Aqua-Hot up through PEX tubing to what are called heat exchangers, or little radiators. As it's shooting through that radiator, hot air, that fans blow across that hot transfer fluid, sending the heat out into your coach, and then of course sends it back down to the boiler to be reheated. The hot water works, it comes in the backside. Like I said, we're not holding water in that tank or heating it, so it's coming in the backside, going through 30 foot of copper coil. And it's going through that copper coil, the hot transfer fluid is transferring the heat through the copper. We're going to do a little rally or a raffle here at the end. I'm going to give away the parts for an annual maintenance. So if you would just fill out your names and put them in there, and I'll grab one here at the end, and someone will get some free stuff. So again, back to that water, as it's shooting through that copper coil, it's heating up from the transfer fluid, transferring the heat through the copper, and then of course sending that up to your faucet. Any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward, the overall function. Okay. So the way you want to use it, and the way I suggest you use it, your diesel burner will give you everything you need, okay? It'll give you all the hot water you need, all the heat you need on its own. The electric element is a maintainer, and wash your hands, do some dishes, hot water. It really won't give you much heat. That's how I describe it, like a maintainer. So you turn the electric on, you're plugged in, you're not worried about paying for the power, you leave that on all the time. And it's gonna keep that boiler between the range of 175 and 190, the temperature of that boiler. So then when you do need a shower, you can jump in the shower, you turn the diesel burner on, and it's already right there. It's already, maintain that heat up here, so you don't have to, there's no lag time as far as waiting to jump in the shower for it to heat it up, because it's already hot. And like I said, as far as heat goes, the electric element won't give you much of anything, but it will give you wash your hands, do some dishes, hot water. There are situations where you may get a shower out of it. Of course, everyone expects different things out of the shower, how hot, how long, that sort of thing. So I just say this with caution, so people don't expect to get a long hot shower on that electric element. So those are the two ways to get that heated up and get what you need. And again, you can leave both switches on all the time if you like, but you will hear every once in a while, you'll hear the diesel burner come on and run a cycle, even if you're not demanding any heat or hot water, because they are both controlled by the same thermostat down in that Aqua-Hot that tells them when to come on and when to go off, whatever function is turned on. And like I was saying about that engine preheat earlier, how to use that is you need your diesel burner on, so you get the heat in that boiler that you need to get your engine hot, and then you turn that engine preheat switch on, and that usually takes about an hour, from what I understand, to get your engine nice and hot to start it up. Any questions on any of that? Right, I must be doing something right here. So, the main thing you want to do, keep in mind, is to use the diesel burner. Okay, it's important to run the diesel burner. Diesel gets gummy when it sits. And the nozzle, it's a fuel nozzle on the tip of this burner. That's what we got up here is the Webasto burner. It's a very tiny orifice there and a very specific spray pattern that comes out of there. So you want to keep that diesel moving through that nozzle. So once a month at the very least, if you can, just turn the diesel burner on, let it run until it shuts itself down, and you've cycled it, just like you would your generator. So you've exercised it. Okay, so you want to do that on a regular basis. Now, the more you run it, that's fine. It's not something that you want to put off. It is a very fuel efficient system, so it burns 0.4 gallons for an hour of actual burn time. And as you've probably noticed, it runs for about 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, depending on what you're demanding, and then shuts down. So it is very fuel efficient. The electric element's not important to exercise that one way or the other. It's just a heating element, like I said, that would be at your house. Although you do want to keep in mind that the heating elements rarely go bad in these. I've changed one in 10 years. And the reason is, when it's sitting in water at your house, you have all the corrosion factors in there. Well, the transfer fluid that's sitting in has rust inhibitors, so it's rare that it would corrode that and make it go bad. Usually if that's not working properly, it's an electrical issue somewhere along the lines. So the main thing, like I said, run it, once a month, once a week. Good way to remember, it's your Sunday shower. Anybody? Okay, got a couple of chuckles there. But a lot of people do it with their generator, every month or so. And if it's in storage, if you can get to it, I would suggest to do that as well. If you can't, then I would suggest to do the annual maintenance when you get it out of storage. Then you're starting off fresh with a new nozzle, a new fuel filter, and you'll be better off for it. You want to keep an eye on the transfer fluid overflow tank, and I tell people to check that about once a month, and that's a good time to do that is when you're exercising it. You always want to check that level when it's hot. So you turn the burner on, let it cycle through until it shuts down on its own, and that's when it should be at the hot line on that overflow tank. Okay. Cold line doesn't even need to be there, honestly, because you never check it cold. The reason you always check it right after a cycle in diesel is at that point that fluid has expanded as far as it's going to expand. Any other time, we don't really know how much it is contracted, so there's no point in really checking it when it's cold. I've seen cases where that tank is completely empty, turn the burner on, it cycles through, and it's at the hot line when it's done burning. So, like I said, don't panic and add some if there's nothing in there when it's cold. Just turn the burner on. If it comes on and runs, then that's fine. Top it off when it's done. There's a safety switch in there, a fluid level sensor that will not allow it to run if it's so low that it can harm something. So you don't want to add some when it's cold and then you run it a cycle in diesel and then it's just spilling out into the ground and you're wasting it. So always check that when it's hot, like I said, about once a month, and that way you'll know what you go through on a regular basis, and then if you spring a leak, you're going to know it sooner as well, because you're paying attention to it. Yes, sir.
So if while it's hot, it's low, it's partially down, do you add it while it's hot?
Yes, in case everyone didn't hear, you add it when it's hot as well. That overflow tank is not under pressure, so that's when you want to add the fluid. Right after that cycle, check it to the hot line. If it's not there, then you go ahead and top it off the hot line, and then you know where you're at, for the next time you check it. And you will go through some on a regular basis as well. The reason being, it's a closed system, quote unquote, but there is an overflow hose coming out of that overflow tank. So you will get some evaporation over time from that. So it's good to keep that on hand for that reason. And then of course, if you spring a leak, you have what you need. It's very important to stick with the same boiler antifreeze that was in there originally, same color, same brand. It's like I said, a Century brand, and it's the yellow. Some people call it green, but you see what you have here. And I'm sure you've probably all noticed that it gets darker over time, and that's just the nature of the system. I believe it has something to do with when air hits it, it starts to discolor, it gets dark. But I can tell you all the Renegades have started off with the yellow Century brand fluid. And what this is, it's very specific to a boiler. It's propylene glycol boiler antifreeze. And the reason I say to stick with that same color and same brand is sometimes if you mix the brands and whatnot, the rust inhibitors don't agree with one another, and it can rust out your boiler. And I've seen this, in cases. A guy had found some cheaper stuff at Menards and was using that for a couple of years, and then his boiler's rusted out. So just if you can, sometimes it's hard to find, but always stick with that yellow Century brand fluid. I've got it. I always have it. So if you need some, I'm really the only place that you can come to get it, I think. So you'll all have my number. And that's not true at all. You can get it other places. You can get it from Aqua-Hot and other places as well. But I do always have it, and I can get it to you. This right here is it's concentrate. So I have concentrate. And then there's pre-mix as well. So any questions about how it works or kind of how to use it? The main thing, use the burner, check the fluid, keep an eye on that. Yes, sir.
When you add it, how important is it to get that thing out and check
The refractometer to check the mixture.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's kind of a fun little toy to have, I check it every year in an annual maintenance. And what I'll do, that's part of the service. And then I can tell you then, what you need to do. Add more distilled water, add some concentrate or whatnot, It's something that 44% is the mixture that you get the best transference of heat at, okay? So it's not about a freeze point or anything like that. It's about transference of heat, and that's 44%. Now, usually it's not right at 44% when I check it. It can be, but there's quite a space for that to go, a little high, a little low, without causing any issues. It's when you get up around 60%, then you can see, it's really heavy on the glycol. What will happen is that holds in the heat, and it won't let it transfer through that copper to your water, or even, through your heat exchangers, out into the coach. So what I do when I do the service and I check that, then I'll advise you, which way to go, and then we'll check it every year, But if you have one, you can check it every month when you add it, and then you'll know where you're at. But again, there's quite a bit of leeway as far as any issues, so it's not something necessary to keep on hand. Yes, sir.
Is it best to use the concentrate or is there a difference?
There's not any difference because you're going to mix this to the percentage of the pre-mixed if you're where you need to be. So this you would mix with distilled water to get it to 44%, which is what the gallons of pre-mix come already at. So yeah, either way, some people like this for storage, other people like to not have to worry about mixing it and just put the straight stuff, the pre-mixed stuff in. So yeah, whatever your preference there. All right, we'll talk about annual maintenance and how to keep it up and stay on top of it. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Annual maintenance, you want to do it once a year, whether you use it a little or a lot. And the reasons are, if you don't use it much, like I said, that diesel has a tendency to get gummed up. There's a stone filter on the back of that nozzle as well that can get gummed up, and then when you go to use it, you're not going to get, it's a very specific spray pattern to get ignition and to keep that burning good and keep it burning clean. So you want to just get that new nozzle on there every year to make sure that that's not the case. If you're using it a lot, which is good and you should, that spray pattern eventually is going to start to wear and change a little bit over time. And then of course you have the fuel filter that you want a new filter every year as well. The basic maintenance every year is a new nozzle, a new fuel filter, and you pull this out. This is called the swirler. And this sits, basically this is what the burner sits in right here in the front. And the fuel shoots down through this, and the air shoots through this and twists that flame into a spiral down a chamber in the burner. This gets carboned up every year, and carbon holds in heat. So the longer and longer that builds up and builds up, the hotter and hotter this is going to get. And what will happen is it starts to warp. There's two different pieces here. I know it may be hard to see, but they start to warp away from one another, and then that causes issues. So get that carbon off there every year, clean that chamber out, wipe it out, and then you'll be better off for it. What I do in annual maintenance is we go a little bit further than that, because it's like I said, it's all I do. When I walk away, I want to make sure that everything is as it should be. So if I do one for you, first thing I want to tell you is you need to be there. Okay, I want you to be there, and you're welcome to pull up in a chair and watch and ask questions. It costs more if you don't watch. Okay, you can't help, but I want you to be there to hear what I hear, see what I see. That way, if you have any questions, you can ask me. If I hear something or see something, then we can discuss it and discuss how to proceed, and how we want to handle the issue. But I'm going to ask you how it's been running for you. Have everything turned off, the electric, the diesel. I'm going to ask you how it's been running for you. Plenty of heat, hot water, and all that good stuff. And if you have any issues or any concerns, and you can ask me about that, of course, and we can go over that. But I have you shut it off. And I've got a test box here that I use in place of what is called the controller on your burner. It's the brains of the burner, basically. And I pull that off and put my test box on there. And I can run your motor separately. I can open the ignition, or shoot off the ignition coil, open the solenoid, light it up. There's a light on here that shows me the flame in there, so I can kind of see and hear what's going on before I pull the burner out. And then once I get the burner out, of course, I am cleaning up your igniters right up here. Make sure those are sharp. Get the carbon off of those. This is called a photo disc, and your flame sensor sits in here as well. This actually goes right by the igniters and the nozzle, and this will get carbon up too, so we scrape that up a little bit. Make sure that flame sensor is clean as it should be, and make sure that this is loose and floppy because it has to float around and seal up against the inside of this chamber here. So I'm going to clean all that up, and while I'm doing this, I'm looking at, you have 4 grommets on there. You have 2 wire harnesses coming in the top, and then 2 fuel lines on the bottom, so there's rubber grommets to seal that air in there. And I just want to make sure that those are pliable because they get hard over time from the heat, and they start getting hard, and then you can lose air where you don't want to lose it. So just checking those, getting that cleaned up, pull the nozzle off, and I've got a fuel pressure tester here that I made to put on there where the nozzle goes. The fuel pressure is 145 PSI, that's what we want. And that is adjustable on the fuel pump, which your fuel pump's right here on the end of the burner as well. So I'll adjust that if it's out of whack by 5 PSI or more. So 145 is right on the money. If it's out of whack, we'll dial that back in and make sure that that's good to go. As you can imagine, fuel to air ratio is going to determine, the cleanliness and the efficiency of the burn. So just want to make sure that that's in order. It's very common for that to change over a year's time. I don't know why, but I take care of a lot of the same people every year. I'll dial it into 145 and get back the next year, and it's 153 or 140. I don't have a good explanation, but I know it does. So I just want to make sure before I walk away that it's where it should be. Yeah, you have a question back in the back? You waving her over, okay. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna check your fuel pressure. Adjust that if needed. Get this cleaned up, of course, with some wire brushes and a drill. New fuel filter that we fill with fuel, of course, every time before we put that back on. And we kind of team up on them. Here's what we've been doing at the rally, so he'll be off doing this, I'll be doing this. And you stick with me or him, whoever's doing the service, so you can hear and see what's going on. But then again, we're going to put the new nozzle back on. There's a gapping tool to gap the igniters, and we always check that gap. Is there anyone here that likes to do their own stuff? A few of you? Okay. I tell people, you'll pay me one time to do it, and I'll show you how to not screw it up. Just little things like putting it back in and setting the igniters and stuff like that. That is common that I see, people just don't quite get right or whatever. But I know a lot of guys that do it on their own, so I'd be glad to do it and show you what I'm doing. I'll go into a little more detail. But we check the gap on those igniters, of course, adjust that if needed. Make sure everything's in order, put the swirler back in, put the burner back in, and then I'm going to put my test box on it, let it run for a minute while I'm putting some tools on, make sure all the air's out of the fuel lines. Fire it up, listen to it burn, look at it, and then put your box back on it. I'm going to have you go in and turn the burner and the electric element back on, and I just want to hear it come on and ignite and do what it's supposed to do before I walk away. Like I'd said earlier, got the refractometer here, and I'm also going to take a sample of that and test that and let you know, if you're heavy on glycol, then I'll say, okay, we'll add some distilled water the next couple times, or if you're light on the glycol, then I'll say maybe we want to get some concentrate in there the next couple times. So, and I'll document all of that for you, your fuel pressure and the antifreeze mixture, model and serial number. Get anything? That's about it. So I got a tail light guarantee. When I drive away, that's it. So that's not true at all either. I'm going to put a decal on there on your Aqua-Hot, and you'll have my name and number. And I tell everyone I work for, you call me if you have any issues or have any questions down the road. I help a lot of people over the phone. I will answer the phone, and I can walk you through some things, help you get by that way. You had a question over here?
Yeah, are there any concerns with diesel fuel treatment?
Aqua-Hot's line on diesel fuel treatments is it doesn't hurt, doesn't help. So I haven't personally seen anything. So that's my line as well. That was theirs. Yes, sir.
You talked about the glycol time, diesel time. What about the fresh water time?
No. There's nothing on an annual or nothing that you have to do. As far as, I do want to mention this, winterization is important if there's a possibility you're going to be in a freezing climate and not be living in it. There's, like I said, 30-foot of copper coil wound up in there. And blowing it out is not enough to help it, to keep it from freezing. So what will happen is that we'll still gather in the bottom of that coil and pop that coil, and that's a $10,000 mistake. So you do want to winterize it, and the way to do that is you just winterize your coach like you would normally with using your water pump. You open the faucet hot and cold, you got the pink coming out, then you know it's been through that coil. There is a mixing valve in the back, and sometimes, I know Aqua-Hot says open that and close it, every once in a while, or open it, close it, put it back to factory to keep it from corroding up. So that's something that you can do, but there's no other maintenance as far as the water side. It's basically just coming in, going through a copper coil, back out through a mixing valve, and up to your coach. Any other questions? Yes. Probably, but I wouldn't recommend counting on it. I've actually changed an Aqua-Hot out for a guy that did that exact thing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's asking if it was sitting in a garage, like an unheated garage. Is just the electric heating element enough to keep it from freezing? And the answer technically is probably yes. although I wouldn't recommend it because I've seen cases where they've lost power and it actually, popped the coil for that reason. So I know it can be a pain to winterize it sometimes, but it's definitely worth the time to do it. If you're living right next to it, it's, I don't want to say yes and then something happen either, so I just total precaution from my end. And I use best off to winterize it if there's any question about it. Yes, ma'am.
Running the diesel all winter long while it is sitting under a carport or in a storage area is sufficient to keep it.
He's asking if it's sufficient to run the diesel all winter long while under a carport outside in freezing weather. Again, that's at your discretion. I wouldn't recommend it just because if there's a failure and you don't realize it in time, it could be a costly mistake. It's of course your motorhome, up to you, but I just tell everyone for my peace of mind that I would winterize it if you're not going to be living in it. And if you winterize it, you can still use it, and you can still use it for heat, and you can still run it and all that. You just obviously can't use it for water because the antifreeze will be in there. Excuse me. But yeah, again, I would just, on the side of safety, caution. Yes.
I get the impression, we're not even owners yet, we're taking delivery of one, but I get the impression that bringing risking to people that the 250 gives a lot more trouble than the 450. What's that about?
Well, again, I am not Aqua-Hot, okay? I just want to make that clear to everyone. I do not work for them. I am not Aqua-Hot, although I am authorized service center for them, but I'm self-employed. And to be honest, the 250s have had issues. I can honestly say that. I'm not going to talk bad about their Aqua-Hot because that's my livelihood and that's what I work on, but the 250s have had some issues with mainly control thermostat issues, the big one. And I know that they're aware of it, and I'm waiting for a solution, just like everyone else is. So waiting for them to get with me and tell me what I can do. Back in the back. Is it feasible to change it to a 450? Yeah, you can. There's a couple of differences. The main thing would be that with a 450, they have two separate heating loops. With a 250, it's just all one loop. But it can be done. You can just bypass the one loop. So you would just only be using the one loop. But yeah, other than that, you can. It can be done. Yep. Yes, right here.
In the 250, the thermistor in the tank, is it the same as the 450?
The control thermostat? It is.
So if you have a problem with 250D with the same one,
Right.
450, you're gonna have
Right, and I'm not an engineer, again, so I have theories about it, that the 450 is a bigger boiler, and my personal theory is that it has something to do with that boiler is quite a bit smaller, and it heats it up, and I think it heats it up a lot faster, and I think that may be causing some issues. Again, that's just, I don't really know. I know the engineers out at Aqua-Hot are working on it, so I know that the control thermostats that they're putting in the 450s now, it is the same one as the 250s, but I don't see that problem in the 450s. So that's, what I can say about that. Any other, yes, sir?
Yeah, the actual burner section, the nozzle, everything else. There's 3 different generations of the 250 now.
Okay, yeah.
Is it the same pump section and flame section on all 3 generations?
It's not, no. There was, originally the first 250s, they didn't use this type of burner. It was a different setup. It was something that they'd, come up with. So the fuel delivery was a little different, the air delivery was different, just a different setup. And what they're doing now is a burner that's just like this. So, just like a Webasto burner. So that's set up the same now as say a 450 is. The burner assembly is the same now.
Did you find issues with the burner assembly in the first generation?
Not necessarily. I mean, from my point, they're hard to work on.
Yeah.
But that's my biggest complaint. You know, I can barely get my hands in them. You know, and then the other setup, those are they're more difficult to get in and get around and do things with. But as far as which one's better, you know, if they're working, they're working. You know, if they're broke, I'll fix it. But I assume they made that change for a reason. You know, and I don't know what that exactly is. You know, that would be a good question for Aqua-Hot, I guess. But yeah, there is a separate style of burner there. To start off with.
But that hasn't been a failure point so much on, you know, everybody's having trouble with control purposes.
Mhm.
And when you brought up, so you're having a much quicker swing in the temperature.
It's my opinion. I don't, you know, again, I'm not a, you know, engineer, but it makes sense to me. So,
Very valid, very valid.
yeah, and I talked to the engineer out there. I've told him my opinion, and you know, so yeah, we'll just wait for them to see.
Replacement sensors is a quick way to change out those sensors.
That's how it seems.
Go through all the gymnastics of the replacement.
Yeah, no, I mean you're basically going to be changing the thermostat out if it fails until they come up with a solution. And I've heard, you know, people that they last a lot longer for this guy, and then this guy is once a month, you know. So there's no real rhyme or reason as to length of time, and you know, from what I've seen.
Is there any way of any wire pickups that put an hour meter?
Oh, I'm sure you could. Yeah, they used to put hour meters in them. They don't anymore. And I think that it was, I think the reason they don't, and again, it's just me theorizing, but I think people were thinking, oh, I only used it 20 hours. There's no point in doing the maintenance, you know? Whereas you'd want to do it once a year, no matter how many hours you put on it, you know? So I think that's why they don't put them on anymore. I think people were just not maintaining them, you know, and then, you know, I didn't use it for 6 months and it won't fire up. Well, that's why, because you didn't use it for 6 months, you know?
I'm just thinking it would be a good, at least one data point for an analysis to see, you know, this many hours.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect me in any way, and it really doesn't, it's not going to help me in any way. Like, as far as a service guy, I mean, to me, an hour meter is more of a, you know, it's a curious, maybe a fun thing for the customer to do, you know, just for, you know, like I said. But as far as troubleshooting or reasons why things are happening, that wouldn't, you know, to me that's...
History is for, okay, after X number of hours, that those temperature control
Yeah.
start having an issue.
Yeah, not, you know, again, not my end of things, so to speak.
Did they go to that system there?
What system?
Did they change everything?
So the burner on the 250s, I don't know. I'm not sure when it was. That's, again, you know, a question for Aqua-Hot, I guess. So I get back to the service. I think we got through the whole service, what I do. And I do want to say this, that I do get around the country a little bit, like I said. And what I do with Service 42, I'm going to get your email. And what I do is I go through the people that I took care of the year before, and I email them for that season next year. And that's, well, all I'm going to email you would be my schedule for that season, the next year. It'll be a reminder for you, hey, it's time to do it, and you'll see where I'm going to be, and then we can meet up. So if you need anything or not today, I really would like you to come up, you know, when we're done here and get a decal and or a business card and get a decal and stick it right on there so you can't lose it. But we got a question over here. We'll take that.
Are you planning to be at the next round at the mothership?
I will definitely be at that one. Like I said, we're from the Upper Indiana, so that one's right next door in Shipshawana. So I'll definitely be at that one. Okay, yeah, no, that'd be great. Yes.
You mentioned Florida, what are you going to do in Florida?
I'm down there in January and February, along the Gulf Coast mainly, and then we do Port St. Lucie for about a week right after the Tampa show. So yeah, down there for a couple months every year. And so I go to the same, you know, high-end resorts, give a seminar, take care of the same guys and that sort of thing, and it works out really well. So I don't go to Arizona. I know a lot of people that do, and I've built a good clientele in Florida over the years. And I look closer for me, so I go down there. I think think that is about all I've got. If there's any other questions about anything else here? Except 250s. I appreciate everyone coming out. I'm going to draw this name. And yeah, so we'll get a nozzle and a filter. Those are the two parts that you get every year. I'll show any bias here. Okay. Ken Lavin, I believe. Ken Lavin, 133, site 133. Kevin Lavin. Got it? Okay, all right. All right. So I appreciate everyone coming out. Like I said, we got a sign-up sheet up here. I do have room for more here at the rally to a certain extent.